You walk into the most exclusive boutique in the city, and before you even speak, whispers follow you like shadows. She doesn't belong here. Look at those shoes. She can't afford that dress. But what if those whispers were about to become the biggest mistake of their lives? What if the woman they were dismissing was about to change everything? This is the story of Zara Hendricks, and how one dress became the key to an empire. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of Lumière Boutique as Zara Hendricks stepped through the heavy glass doors. Her worn sneakers squeaked softly against the polished surface, a sound that seemed to echo louder than it should in the hushed atmosphere of Manhattan's most exclusive fashion house. She wore a simple cardigan over faded jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, carrying a canvas tote bag that had seen better days. The whispers started immediately. "Is she lost?" came the first murmur from behind a rack of designer gowns. "Maybe she's looking for the subway entrance," another voice added, followed by stifled laughter. Zara's fingers tightened slightly on her bag's worn handles, but her expression remained serene. She had learned long ago that people's first impressions rarely told the whole story. After all, she was living proof of that. 3 years ago, Zara had been exactly what she appeared to be today. A custodial worker at a downtown office building, arriving before dawn to empty trash cans and mop floors before the important people arrived. She had worked the night shift for 2 years, saving every penny she could while nursing a secret dream that occupied her thoughts during those quiet, solitary hours. Between buildings, during her 30-minute breaks, Zara would sit in her beat-up Honda Civic with her laptop balanced on her knees, coding by the light of street lamps. She was building an app, a revolutionary platform that would connect small businesses with micro-investors, democratizing access to capital for entrepreneurs who couldn't get traditional bank loans. She called it BridgeBuilder. For 18 months she had worked on BridgeBuilder in stolen moments, during lunch breaks, between shifts, and on weekends when others were sleeping in or socializing. Zara was debugging code, refining algorithms, and dreaming of a world where background didn't determine your access to opportunity. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning in March. Tech Venture Global, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious firms, had been quietly monitoring emerging apps when they discovered BridgeBuilder. Within a week, they had made an offer that left Zara speechless. $47 million for her company, plus a consulting contract that would make her one of the youngest tech moguls in the country. But here's what made Zara different from most overnight success stories. She didn't change. She kept her small apartment in Brooklyn, still took the subway to work, and continued wearing the same modest clothes that had carried her through her custodial days. The only difference was the number in her bank account, and the quiet confidence that came with knowing she had the power to make real change in the world, which brought her to Lumière Boutique on this crisp October afternoon. She had been invited to a charity gala next week, one that would raise funds for educational programs in underserved communities. For the first time in her life, Zara wanted to buy something beautiful. Not to show off, but to honor the moment and the cause. "May I help you?" The voice belonged to Evangeline Worthington, the boutique's manager, whose tone suggested she was doing Zara an enormous favor by even acknowledging her presence. Evangeline was a tall, sharp-featured woman in her 40s, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe chignon, and her pale blue eyes swept over Zara with the efficiency of a security scanner. "I'm looking for something special," Zara said simply, her voice calm and warm. "I have an event next week." Evangeline's eyebrows rose slightly. "An event?" She managed to pack an impressive amount of skepticism into 2 words. "What kind of event would that be?" "A charity gala," Zara replied, seemingly oblivious to the condescension dripping from Evangeline's voice. Behind Evangeline, a younger woman named Cordelia, a sales associate with auburn hair and a nervous disposition, shifted uncomfortably. Cordelia had been working at Lumière for 8 months, and while she had learned to follow Evangeline's lead in most situations, something about this interaction felt wrong. The customer seemed genuinely nice, and there was something in her eyes that suggested depths beneath the surface. "I see," Evangeline said, her voice growing cooler. "Well, our gowns start at $15,000. Perhaps you might be more comfortable at one of the department stores downtown?" The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Around them, other customers had begun to notice the exchange. Mrs. Pemberton, a regular client who spent more on handbags than most people made in a year, paused in her browsing to watch the drama unfold. Two other women, both draped in designer labels and dripping with jewelry, exchanged meaningful glances. "I'd still like to look around, if that's all right," Zara said, her tone remaining perfectly pleasant. Evangeline's lips tightened into what might generously be called a smile. "Of course. Cordelia, why don't you assist our customer?" The word customer was delivered with the same enthusiasm most people reserved for discussing root canal procedures. Cordelia stepped forward, her cheeks pink with embarrassment. "Would you like to see any particular style?" she asked quietly. Zara's eyes had already found what she was looking for. In the center of the boutique, displayed on a mannequin like a piece of art, was the most beautiful dress she had ever seen. It was midnight blue, the color of the sky just before dawn, with delicate silver embroidery that caught the light like captured starlight. The dress was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated without being stuffy, everything Zara had imagined, but never dared to hope she might someday own. "That one," she said, pointing to the masterpiece. Cordelia's eyes widened. "Oh, that's the Valentina original. It's $28,000. The number seemed to echo through the boutique. Conversation stopped. Mrs. Pemberton actually turned to stare. Even the background music seemed to pause. "She can't afford that dress," Mrs. Pemberton whispered to her companion, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at her bag," another voice added. "I think I saw that same one at a thrift store." "Maybe she's confused about what kind of store this is," came a third whisper. Zara heard every word. She had developed selective hearing over the years, learning to tune out the noise when necessary, but today she let each comment land. She wanted to remember this moment. Not because it hurt, but because it was going to make what came next so much sweeter. "I'd like to try it on," she said to Cordelia, her voice steady. Cordelia looked helplessly at Evangeline, who had been watching the exchange with the fascination of someone observing a particularly interesting social experiment. "I'm afraid that dress requires a deposit just to try on," Evangeline interjected smoothly. $5,000, refundable upon purchase. It was a lie. Lumière had no such policy, but Evangeline was betting that this would be enough to send their unwelcome visitor packing. Zara reached into her canvas tote bag and pulled out a simple black wallet. From it, she withdrew a credit card. Nothing flashy, just a standard-looking piece of plastic. That's fine," she said. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Evangeline's face. She had expected defeat, tears, or at least a hasty retreat. Instead, she was looking at the kind of calm confidence that couldn't be faked. "Very well," Evangeline said, taking the card with obvious reluctance. "Cordelia, prepare the fitting room." As Cordelia carefully removed the dress from its display, the whispers grew louder. "This is going to be embarrassing. I almost feel sorry for her. Someone should tell her before she humiliates herself." Zara followed Cordelia to the fitting room, a spacious chamber with mirrors on 3 walls and a velvet ottoman in the center. The dress was even more beautiful up close, the craftsmanship evident in every stitch and bead. "I'll be right outside if you need anything," Cordelia said softly, and Zara caught something in her voice, not pity, but kindness. It was the first genuine warmth she had felt since entering the boutique. Alone in the fitting room, Zara carefully changed into the dress. The fabric felt like liquid silk against her skin, and as she zipped it up, she understood why it cost more than most people's cars. It fit her perfectly, transforming her from an ordinary woman into someone who looked like she belonged in magazine spreads and red carpet events. But more than that, looking at herself in the mirror, Zara saw something else. The woman she had become. Not because of the dress, but because of the journey that had brought her here. The late nights, the code that wouldn't compile, the dreams that had seemed impossible from the floor of an office building at 3 a.m. She had built something from nothing, and no amount of whispers could take that away. When she emerged from the fitting room, the boutique fell silent. Even Mrs. Pemberton had to admit that the dress was stunning on her. Zara moved with a grace that couldn't be bought, her posture confident without being arrogant. "It's beautiful," Cordelia breathed and meant it. Evangeline, however, was not ready to concede anything. "Yes, well, it's quite nice. But as I mentioned, it is $28,000. Plus tax, of course." "I'll take it," Zara said simply. The words hung in the air, like a challenge to reality itself. This couldn't be happening. Women who shopped at Lumière didn't carry canvas tote bags and wear sneakers that had seen better days. There had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding, a moment when the fantasy would collapse and reveal the truth they all expected. Evangeline said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Did you say you'll take it?" "Yes," Zara replied, "and I'd like to look at shoes and accessories to go with it." Mrs. Pemberton leaned toward her companion. "Her card is going to be declined," she whispered. "This is about to get very uncomfortable." But Evangeline was already processing the payment, her fingers moving reluctantly across the tablet. She was waiting for the moment when the transaction would fail, when she could deliver the coup de grace with professional sympathy. "I'm sorry, but your card has been declined." Instead, the screen flashed green. Approved. The color drained from Evangeline's face. Around the boutique, the whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a stunned silence that felt heavier than the previous chatter. "There must be some mistake," Mrs. Pemberton said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That card can't have that kind of limit." Zara turned to face her, and for the first time since entering the boutique, she smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile or a triumphant one. It was the smile of someone who had just realized she had the power to change everything. "You're right," she said to Mrs. Pemberton. "There has been a mistake, but not the one you think." She walked back to the counter where Evangeline stood frozen, staring at the approved transaction as if it might transform into something else if she looked at it hard enough. "Evangeline," Zara said, her voice still calm but carrying a new authority, "I have another purchase I'd like to make." "Another purchase?" Evangeline's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes," Zara said, reaching into her bag again. This time, she pulled out a different card, one that definitely didn't look standard. It was black, with silver lettering that caught the light. "I'd like to buy the boutique." The silence that followed was so complete that the distant sound of traffic seemed to echo through the space. Evangeline's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Mrs. Pemberton's face had gone pale. Even Cordelia, who had been trying to stay in the background, took a step forward. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Evangeline finally managed. "I said I'd like to buy the boutique," Zara repeated, her tone as casual as if she were ordering coffee. "I've been looking for a good investment opportunity, and this seems perfect." She reached into her bag once more and pulled out a business card, placing it on the counter. "Zara Hendricks, CEO of Hendricks Holdings. You might have heard of my company, BridgeBuilder?" The recognition hit Evangeline like a physical blow. BridgeBuilder had been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine just 2 months ago. The story of the janitor who became a tech mogul had been covered by every major news outlet in the country. You're Z. Hendricks," Evangeline stammered. "The woman who sold BridgeBuilder to Tech Venture Global." "That's me," Zara said cheerfully. "And I've been looking for ways to invest in businesses that could use some positive changes. This place has potential." She looked around the boutique, taking in the shocked faces, the beautiful clothes, the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. "I think we could make some improvements, make it more welcoming. More inclusive." "More inclusive?" Mrs. Pemberton sputtered. "This is Lumière Boutique. We have standards." Zara turned to her with that same calm smile. "You're absolutely right. We do need standards. Standards like treating every customer with respect, regardless of what they are wearing or what they look like. Standards like judging people by their character rather than their appearance. Marilyn said she walked to the center of the boutique, and suddenly she wasn't the uncertain woman who had entered an hour ago. She was a CEO, a leader, someone who had built an empire from nothing and was about to do it again. Lumière Boutique is going to change, she announced to the room. We're going to become a place where every woman feels beautiful and valued, regardless of her budget or her background. We're going to offer payment plans, host events for women from all walks of life, and partner with local charities to provide professional clothing for women entering the workforce. Evangeline's face had gone from pale to red to pale again. You can't just buy a boutique because you didn't like the service. Actually, Zara said, pulling out her phone, I can. She dialed a number and waited. Marcus? It's Zara. I need you to contact the owners of Lumière Boutique on 5th Avenue. Yes? I want to buy it. Today if possible. She hung up and turned back to Evangeline. My lawyer will have the paperwork ready within the hour. The current owners have been looking for a buyer for months. They're over-leveraged and need to sell quickly. This was true. Zara had done her research before coming here. Not because she had planned to buy the boutique, but because she made it a habit to research any business she visited. It was a lesson from her coding days. Always understand the system before you try to change it. Now, she continued, I'll need to make some staffing decisions. Cordelia, you've been kind and professional throughout this entire situation. I'd like to offer you the position of assistant manager, with a significant raise and profit-sharing plan. Cordelia's eyes filled with tears. Really? You'd do that? You treated me like a human being, Zara said simply. That's exactly the kind of person I want representing this boutique. She turned to Evangeline, whose face had crumpled into something approaching panic. As for you, Evangeline, we need to talk. Your behavior today was unacceptable, but everyone deserves a second chance. You can stay, but you'll need to attend sensitivity training and work under Cordelia's supervision. And you'll need to personally apologize to every customer you've treated poorly. But I'm the manager, Evangeline protested weakly. You were the manager, Zara corrected. Now you're an employee on probation. The choice is yours. She looked around the boutique at the other customers, who were still staring in shock. As for the rest of you, I want you to know that Lumière Boutique is going to be a different kind of place. We'll still carry the finest clothes and accessories, but we'll welcome everyone who walks through our doors with respect and kindness. Mrs. Pemberton, who had been silent for several minutes, finally found her voice. This is outrageous. I've been shopping here for 15 years. I demand to speak to the owner. Zara smiled. You are speaking to the owner, and you're welcome to continue shopping here, as long as you can treat other customers with the same respect you'd want for yourself. She walked back to the counter, where her dress was being carefully wrapped in tissue paper. I'll take those shoes we discussed, Cordelia, and perhaps a handbag to match. As Cordelia hurried to gather the accessories, Zara's phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. Paperwork ready. Owners accepted your offer. Congratulations on your new boutique. It's official, Zara announced. Welcome to the new Lumière Boutique. 3 months later, Lumière Boutique had become something unprecedented in the world of high-end fashion. A place where luxury met inclusivity, where every woman could find something beautiful within her budget, and where the staff was trained to make every customer feel like royalty. The boutique now offered 3 different sections: the original high-end designer area, a mid-range section with beautiful pieces from emerging designers, and a special occasions rental program that allowed women to wear designer gowns for important events at a fraction of the purchase price. Zara had also instituted the Lumière Scholarship Program, providing free professional clothing and styling sessions for women entering the workforce, survivors of domestic violence, and recent graduates who couldn't afford interview attire. The changes had been met with surprising enthusiasm. While some of the old clientele had initially protested, most had come to appreciate the warmer, more welcoming atmosphere. Sales had actually increased by 30%, and the boutique had been featured in several magazines as a model for sustainable luxury retail. On a Thursday afternoon, Zara stood in the boutique watching Cordelia, now the general manager, help a young woman named Jasmine find a dress for her college graduation. Jasmine was a first-generation college student who had saved for months to afford something special for her ceremony. "I love this one," Jasmine said, holding up a beautiful emerald green dress. "But it's still a bit more than I can spend." "Let me see what we can do," Cordelia said with a warm smile. "It's the end of the season, so there might be a discount available." Zara watched as Cordelia worked with Jasmine to find a solution, a small alteration that would make the dress perfect, combined with the end-of-season discount that brought it within her budget. The joy on Jasmine's face when she looked at herself in the mirror was worth more than any profit margin. "Mrs. Hendricks?" Cordelia approached with a tablet in her hands. "The final numbers are in for the quarter. We exceeded our projections by 12%. "That's wonderful," Zara said. But her attention was still on Jasmine, who was now posing for photos with her grandmother, both of them crying happy tears. "There's something else," Cordelia continued. "Evangeline has completed her sensitivity training, and she's requested a meeting with you. She wants to apologize formally and ask about the possibility of earning back some of her responsibilities." Zara nodded. Over the past 3 months, Evangeline had surprised everyone with her willingness to change. She had attended every training session, volunteered for community events, and gradually begun to understand that luxury and kindness weren't mutually exclusive. "Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning," Zara said. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow." As the afternoon light streamed through the boutique's windows, casting the same crystal reflections across the marble floor, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The whispers that had once stung now seemed like echoes from another lifetime. She had learned that true power wasn't in the money in your bank account or the clothes on your back. It was in the ability to lift others up, to create positive change, and to transform judgment into understanding. The midnight blue dress, the one that had started it all, hung in her closet at home, carefully preserved. She had worn it to the charity gala where she had announced the Lumière Scholarship Program and raised over $2 million for educational initiatives. But more than that, it had become a symbol of transformation, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful changes come from the most unexpected places. As she prepared to leave for the day, Zara took one last look around the boutique. The space hummed with positive energy, filled with the conversations of women finding clothes that made them feel confident and beautiful, regardless of their budget or background. The staff moved with purpose and kindness, treating every customer like they were the most important person in the world. In the end, the whispers had been right about one thing: she couldn't afford that dress, not because she lacked the money, but because she was destined for something much more valuable. She was meant to buy the boutique, to create jobs, to change lives, and to prove that success without kindness is just expensive emptiness. The woman who had once cleaned offices in the quiet hours before dawn had become the owner of one of the most successful boutiques in the city, but more importantly, she had created a place where every woman could feel beautiful, valued, and worthy of respect. And that, Zara realized as she locked the doors behind her, was the most beautiful transformation of all. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floor of Lumière Boutique as Zara arrived for her weekly walkthrough. What she discovered would challenge everything she thought she knew about second chances and the true cost of transformation. A small crowd had gathered outside the boutique, and not the usual kind of customers she had come to expect. These were protesters, holding signs that read, "Luxury for all means luxury for none, and preserve fashion's standards." At the center of the group stood a familiar figure, Mrs. Pemberton, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her designer suit impeccable as always. "Mrs. Hendricks," called out Victoria Chen, a reporter from Fashion Weekly who had been covering the boutique's transformation. "Any comment on the petition to revoke your business license?" Zara paused, her hand on the boutique's door handle. She had known this day might come. Success, she had learned, often came with unexpected enemies. "I believe in open dialogue," she said calmly. "Mrs. Pemberton, would you like to come inside and discuss your concerns?" Mrs. Pemberton's face flushed pink. "I most certainly would not. This establishment is no longer the Lumière Boutique I've known for 15 years. You've turned it into a discount department store with delusions of grandeur." The accusation stung more than Zara cared to admit. She had spent months carefully balancing accessibility with luxury, ensuring that the boutique maintained its reputation for quality while opening its doors to a broader clientele. But perhaps she had been naive to think that change could come without resistance. "What exactly are you proposing?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the growing crowd of onlookers. Mrs. Pemberton stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "I represent 43 long-standing customers who have collectively spent over $2 million at this boutique over the past decade. We demand that you restore the original policies, return to our membership-only system, and eliminate these populist programs. And if I refuse, then we'll take our business elsewhere, permanently. And we'll make sure every other high-end boutique in the city knows exactly what happened here." The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Zara felt the weight of every employee's job, every community program, every woman who had found confidence in her store. $2 million in annual revenue wasn't something she could ignore, no matter how much her personal fortune might cushion the blow. "I need to think about this," she said finally. "Give me until tomorrow." As the crowd dispersed, Zara entered the boutique to find her staff watching anxiously through the windows. Cordelia approached with a concerned expression. "How bad is it?" Cordelia asked quietly. "Bad enough," Zara replied, "but not insurmountable. Tell me, how has Evangeline been doing lately?" The question seemed to surprise Cordelia. "She's actually been incredible. Yesterday she spent 2 hours helping a teenager find a dress for her quinceañera, and she didn't charge the family a penny for the alterations. She said it reminded her of her own daughter." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "And our community programs? How are they performing?" "Beyond our wildest expectations. The scholarship program has helped 47 women find employment, and 12 of them have already been promoted in their new jobs. The rental program has generated 30% more revenue than we projected. And we have a waiting list for styling sessions." "Show me the numbers," Zara said, settling into her office chair. "All of them." As Cordelia spread the financial reports across her desk, Zara began to see the full picture. While Mrs. Pemberton's group represented significant revenue, the boutique's new customer base had grown exponentially. The average transaction was smaller, but the volume was triple what it had been under the old system. More importantly, the boutique's reputation had attracted attention from unexpected quarters. 3 major fashion magazines had featured their inclusive model, resulting in partnerships with emerging designers who wanted to be associated with the brand. The boutique had become a case study in business schools, and Zara had been invited to speak at conferences around the world. "There's something else," Cordelia said hesitantly. "I've been keeping track of social media mentions. The hashtag #LumiereForAll has been used over 50,000 times in the past month. And the stories. Zara, you need to see some of these stories." She pulled up her tablet and began reading. "Maria Rodriguez says that finding her interview suit here helped her land her dream job as a pediatric nurse. Jennifer Kim wrote that the confidence she gained from your styling session gave her the courage to start her own business. And this one," Cordelia's voice caught slightly. "This one is from Jasmine, the college graduate. She says that being treated with respect here was the first time she felt like she truly belonged in a professional environment." Zara leaned back in her chair, processing the information. The decision she faced wasn't just about business. It was about the kind of world she wanted to create. That evening, she found herself back at her old apartment in Brooklyn, the one she had refused to leave despite her newfound wealth. She made herself a simple dinner and sat at her kitchen table, looking out at the city lights. Her laptop was open to a familiar sight: lines of code. Not for a new app this time, but for a program that would help track the social impact of her business decisions. As she worked, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Miss Hendricks, my name is Amara Williams. I'm a senior at Columbia Business School, and I'm writing my thesis on your boutique. I wondered if we could talk. I think you should know about something I discovered." Intrigued, Zara called the number. Amara answered on the first ring. "Ms. Hendricks, thank you for calling. I've been researching the economic impact of your boutique's transformation, and I found something interesting about Mrs. Pemberton's group." "What did you find?" "Most of them haven't actually reduced their spending at all. In fact, according to credit card data and social media posts, they've been shopping at Lumière just as much as before. They're just angry about sharing the space." Zara felt a piece of the puzzle click into place. They're not upset about the quality or the service. They're upset about the exclusivity. Exactly. And there's more. I spoke with several employees at other high-end boutiques, and they're all dealing with similar pressure. There's a coordinated effort to maintain what they call shopping segregation in luxury retail. After the call, Zara sat in the quiet of her apartment, thinking about the woman she had been just 1 year ago. The custodial worker who had cleaned offices in the early morning hours would have been intimidated by Mrs. Pemberton's ultimatum. But the CEO she had become understood that some fights were worth having, regardless of the cost. The next morning she arrived at the boutique to find Mrs. Pemberton waiting with her entourage, all of them dressed impeccably and wearing expressions of grim determination. "Well?" Mrs. Pemberton asked without preamble. "What's your decision?" Zara looked around the boutique, taking in the sight of her diverse staff, preparing for another day of serving customers from all walks of life. Near the fitting rooms, she could see Evangeline patiently helping an elderly woman try on a dress for her granddaughter's wedding. At the jewelry counter, Cordelia was showing a young professional a selection of accessories within her budget. "I have a counter-proposal," Zara said, turning back to Mrs. Pemberton. "I'm expanding." "Expanding?" Mrs. Pemberton's voice rose an octave, and opening 5 more boutiques in the next 2 years. Each one will follow the same model as this one. Luxury fashion accessible to all women, with programs to support our community. She smiled calmly. "I've also decided to create a foundation that will help other boutiques around the country adopt similar inclusive practices." Mrs. Pemberton's face went from pink to red to purple. "You're making a terrible mistake. We have influence in this city. We can destroy your reputation." "You're welcome to try," Zara replied. "But I think you'll find that the world has changed. People are more interested in businesses that reflect their values than in maintaining artificial barriers." She gestured toward the boutique's windows, where passers-by were stopping to look at the displays. "Look around you. This is what success looks like in the 21st century. Not exclusion, but inclusion. Not barriers, but bridges." Mrs. Pemberton opened her mouth to respond, but she was interrupted by an unexpected voice. "Actually, she's right." The speaker was Eleanor Pemberton Hayes, Mrs. Pemberton's own daughter, who had just entered the boutique. "Mother, I've been shopping here for months. The service is better than it's ever been, and the atmosphere is so much more welcoming." Mrs. Pemberton stared at her daughter in shock. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" "I'm here because this is the only place in the city where I can bring my friends from work without worrying about them being judged." Eleanor looked around the boutique with obvious affection. "My assistant Carmen found her wedding dress here last month. She never could have afforded it at the old prices, but the payment plan made it possible. And you know what? It was the most beautiful wedding I've ever attended." The confrontation that followed was swift and decisive. Mrs. Pemberton's coalition began to fracture, as several members admitted they had continued shopping at Lumière despite their public protests. Others revealed that they had been pressured to join the boycott by a small group of particularly vocal customers. In the end, Mrs. Pemberton found herself standing alone, her influence dissolved by the simple power of change and the courage of her own daughter to stand up for what was right. "This isn't over," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're right," Zara agreed. "It's not over. It's just beginning." As the months passed, Zara's prediction proved accurate. The boutique's success became a model for other businesses, and the inclusive luxury movement spread across the fashion industry. She received letters from women around the world who had been inspired by her story to start their own businesses, stand up to discrimination, or simply treat others with greater kindness. The midnight blue dress that had started it all became part of a traveling exhibition about the power of transformation, displayed in museums and business schools as a symbol of how one person's courage could create ripples of change that extended far beyond their initial impact. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, when Zara was reviewing quarterly reports in her office. Cordelia knocked on the door with a special delivery. "This just arrived for you," she said, handing Zara a beautifully wrapped package. Inside was a simple card and a small silver pin shaped like a bridge. The card read, "To Zara. Thank you for building bridges where others saw only walls. With gratitude, the women of Lumière." It was signed by dozens of customers, employees, and community members whose lives had been touched by the boutique's transformation. As Zara pinned it to her jacket, she realized that this, not the money, not the fame, not even the business success, was what true wealth looked like. The woman who had once been dismissed with whispers had become the voice of a movement. And in the end, that made all the difference.